Welcome to Medill Sports Talk, where we break down the news this week for the sports you love. Welcome into the final episode of MST's inaugural season. I'm your host, Casey Bannon, alongside baseball savant Lance Brozdowski and Pete Davidson's cousin, Justin Birnbaum. Welcome, fellas. I'd like to start with an obvious Cy Young favorite in the National League. New York Mets pitcher Jacob deGrom is putting together an all-time great season, not to mention he's the second most famous person from DeLand, Florida, right behind my beautiful mother. The right-hander has allowed 3 or fewer runs in 24 consecutive starts and currently holds a 1.68 ERA. And yet, Lance, he's only 8-8 on the season. Is it finally time to put wins and losses to bed as a measurement for pitchers?
You know, I was up really late last night reading a message from you, and I knew this question was coming up. I thought about it for a while. This is non-topic. We don't have to discuss this anymore. We're to the point where we're past wins. We're past any win-loss statistic. I don't care about quality starts. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is pitcher value. I care about WAR. There's 2 differences. There's the baseball reference kind of area of WAR, and there's the Fangraphs idea of WAR. The Fangraphs one, in layman's terms, talks about what should have happened. The baseball reference one is accounting for what happened. Those are the 2 differences. On one end, we have Jacob deGrom with 7.3 WAR on Fangraphs. On the other end, we have Aaron Nola with 8.9 WAR on baseball reference. You take your pick. I don't care about wins. I care about WAR. I care about pitcher value.
Sorry to jump in. I just didn't mean to upset you that much. I was just saying if you're
passionate.
I know this is a sensitive subject for you. You're a New York Mets a staple on New York local radio. What has watching this wasted brilliance been like for you?
Well, for anyone who hasn't been following the Mets, step right up and greet the Mets, because this is eerily similar to when the team acquired Johan Santana in 2008. Santana easily could have been a 20-game winner in 2008 or 2009, but we had the same issue where the Mets just couldn't score runs for him, and the same way Santana's was wasted back then, deGrom is being wasted now. It's a travesty. It hurts to see him like this, and I can't take much more of it.
I can see it in your eyes. Speaking of keeping runs off the board, as you mentioned, there's been several big-time defensive plays just in the past week. Justin, I know it often gets overlooked, but who are some of the guys where defensive values might get you in front of a TV to watch?
I think you really got to take the time and look at Adam Engel, who's been roaming the outfield in guaranteed rate field here in Chicago. He's a center fielder for the White Sox, and he's been unbelievable playing center field for them. He had an unbelievable series against the Yankees where he took back 2 home runs, literally jumping over the fence and reaching over and bringing the ball back. And then earlier this week, he made an unbelievable play where he slipped, fell, and still managed to rob Giancarlo Stanton of a double at Yankee Stadium. I'm starting to notice a pattern here. He ranks top 10 in Major League Baseball in terms of sprint speed, and it really just speaks to the range he has in the outfield. He reminds me of a Kevin Pillar kind of type player where he's very strong defensively, and if his bat could come around, then he really could become an exciting 2-way player.
Lance, you talk about, especially late at night, aesthetically pleasing guys to watch to play the field. What do you mean when you say aesthetic? Is there a sexy way to play defense?
There's, of course, a sexy way to play defense. You got to go to the West. We're going out West. We're going to Andrelton Simmons, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Really enjoy this guy. He came from the Braves. Obviously, everyone knows he's the best, in my opinion, and you know what? My opinion is objective at this point, right? So my opinion, the best defensive shortstop in baseball. He's tops right now in Fangraphs defensive run saves metrics. As you can probably tell, it feels like I'm sponsored by Fangraphs, probably because I am to some extent. I'd love to write for them. Shoot me over with a job offer anytime. Don't worry about it. And Andrelton Simmons is a fantastic player. I also want to go back to my Cardinals. I got to give some love to St. Louis and Harrison Bader. He's sprint speed right now is top 10 in baseball. He's right next to guys like Billy Hamilton. He can hit better than Billy Hamilton. He's a better base runner than Billy Hamilton. This guy is unbelievable. I'm all about him. If we were to be invaded by aliens, guys, and we could clone one player and put them all across the diamond, I'm picking Andrelton Simmons. I'm putting him everywhere.
You both mentioned sprint speed. Where does Jackie Bradley, where does JB Jesus fall into this?
He's around there, I think. You got to check a baseball spot.
I just feel like that corner in Fenway is a great litmus test for center fielders. Pilar runs it better than anyone. He doesn't even play there.
And JBJ is one of the strongest arms ever. I know, as a Boston guy, you know that throw he made from home plate over the wall in center field. It's just unbelievable.
I sat in right field for one summer, and it was just like watching a sniper play center field. It was amazing. All right, now part of the show that makes you cringe. Ooh, Orioles slugger Chris Davis has been hot lately, boosting his average all the way up to 173. He's on pace to have the worst WAR in a season since 1901. That would rank him 81,912th out of 81,912. To make things worse, he's still owed $84.5 million of his $161 million contract over the next 4 years. Lance, Worst contract of all time?
It's up there. I think that I from the days past, I always remember the really good Chris Davis, so I think I'm a little bit biased. But I'm going to go and highlight something that was, I think, objectively, again, we're going with the objective standard here, the worst contract in baseball history, which is the 10-year contract the Angels shelled out to 32-year-old Albert Pujols. They pay him, I think, a total of about $84 million over the next 3 years. It is unbelievable. This guy just went down for the rest of the season with knee problems. I'm stunned that he even has knees at this point. I saw him run the other day, looked like two wooden legs running around first base. I don't understand how they look at a 32-year-old player on the back end of general aging curves and say they want to have this guy through his age 42 season. He's been a negative WAR player each of the last 2 years. I love Albert Pujols, growing up a Cardinals fan. He's coming back in 2019. They just released the schedules, back to St. Louis for the first time. Man, he's been terrible. That contract is awful.
Before I get to Justin, you just might have answered my question, but how does a baseball executive that gets paid millions of dollars to do this make that call?
That's a very good question. But Billy Epler also picked up Shohei Ohtani, so I think it kind of starting to neutralize out. He has Mike Trout. He has my boy Andrelton Simmons. I don't know. I guess he passes. You take the good with the bad.
We'll figure out his future later. Worst contract of all time. I already know where you're going with this, but you're wearing the colors on your tie.
I have 4 words for you guys. Happy Bobby Bonilla Day, okay? I can't in good conscience talk about bad contracts and not bring up Bobby Bonilla. The guy hasn't played in 2 decades, yet the Mets still found a way to pay him $1 million every 1st of July. Every year. I look forward to it. It's the one time a year I hear from the foundation of my college intramural basketball team, who sends me a message and says, Happy Bobby Bonilla Day, kid. Shout out to Dylan Davis. But it's unbelievable. It's crazy how bad this organization is with money, and I feel like they're more irresponsible with money than James Harden is at the airport.
Oh, I just learned what that phrase meant. It's fantastic. Good for you. And what do you do every Bobby Bonilla Day? Just quickly.
I wallow in misery a little bit.
Okay.
That's just every day for a
So
Mets fan.
it's nothing different than the rest
Nothing
of the
out of the ordinary.
Right. All right. So for now, that'll have to do it for Medill Sports Talk on the MLB. Coming up, one of our directors, Mike Kwasinski, steps out from behind the scenes to break down the WNBA with Kristen Keller. For Lance and the King of Staten Island, I'm Casey Bannon. Stay tuned.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Northwestern break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all the go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. At Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
When I get all steamed up, then I shout.
Tip me over and pour me out. Oh. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Cheers. Take time to be a dad. today.
Oh, look, a redhead.
Staring contest.
You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him winning both the Daytona 500 and the Brickyard 400 in the same year, 1 in 195 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism, 1 in 68. I'm Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs.
Wow, these are really good.
You act surprised. Practice makes perfect.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who don't need perfection. They need you.
Why hang around waiting for opportunity to knock when instead you can track opportunity down and knock on its door? You might ask, what's the best way to identify where opportunity lives? Here's a hint. Its door is colored purple. Northwestern University. Opportunity awaits your knock.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
To fill you in on everything that's been happening with the WNBA. Last week, 8 teams began competing for this year's title as WNBA champion. The first round of the playoffs saw Phoenix Mercury and Los Angeles Sparks wins over the Dallas Wings and the Minnesota Lynx. In the second round, the Mercury and Washington Mystics punched their ticket to the semifinals, defeating the Connecticut Sun and the Sparks. Now, here we stand, with 4 teams remaining. The Mercury, the Mystics, the Atlanta Dream, and the Seattle Storm. If you're a bit confused on how rapid this process went, let me break it down for you. Where the NBA has 7-game series for each playoff match, the WNBA plays single elimination through the first 2 rounds, and then a best-of-5 series in the semis and finals. Chris, the WNBA is already significantly shorter compared to the NBA. What do you think of the vast difference between the 2 leagues?
You know, I think it's kind of unfair. I mean, you look at the last 2 seasons, the Sparks and Lynx played for the WNBA championship the last 2 years, and they're relegated to a single elimination playoff game. That's a disservice to them. That's a disservice to the kind of teams I have, the 2 veteran presence teams. I mean, Candace Parker's an MVP, Maya Moore's an MVP, and they only get 1 game. This should have gone 7 games, or at the very least 3. I think it's a disservice to the league. I think it's a disservice to these 2 teams.
Well, speaking of the semifinals, we're right in the middle of each best-of-5 series. Currently, the Dream and the Mystics are even with 1 win each, and 1-seeded the Storm hold a 2-0 lead over the Mercury. What can we expect from each of these pairings?
You know, the Storm are my favorite to win the WNBA championship. I mean, you got Sue Bird, Jewel Lloyd, and MVP Brandon Stewart. There's no way that they don't, or no way that they're not currently favored. And you look at the Mercury, they have Diana Taurasi and Brittany Griner. Taurasi's literally the Kobe of the WNBA, and not, in my opinion, the greatest of all time to ever play in the WNBA. But when you look at the Atlanta Dream, a team that clawed their way into the top 3 of the seedings of the WNBA playoffs without Angel McCoughtry, that's something you can't sneeze at. They're a great team. They got good leadership, and I think that they're a pretty good contender come this this series with Washington.
All right, and then while the playoffs will continue, one player is potentially out for her team's next game. Mystics forward Alina Deladon suffered a bone bruise during the fourth quarter of the team's playoff game against the Dream Tuesday night, which likely will prevent her from stepping on the court tomorrow night. How much will this affect the outcome for the Mystics' 5-game series against the Dream?
It really depends on how bad the injury is for Elena. She's, in my opinion, she's the Larry Bird of the WNBA. She can make any kind of shots. She can play any position in 3 to 4 to 5, and she's got the talent to be a consistent MVP contender for the next 3 or 4, however years she's in the league. But she's so important to this league that without her, I don't see the Mystics advancing to the next round. I mean, she's she's got 3 seasons with 20 points per game, and she's never averaged below double digits in her career. So if she's not playing, the Mystics are at a severe disadvantage.
And when you look at her stats, it's definitely something that they need to consider. But the player awards have already been released this season, with Brianna Stewart of the Seattle Storm earning MVP honors. However, she had strong competition from the Dallas Wings' Liz Cambage, whose breakthrough season was one of the best in the WNBA this year. Chris, what are your thoughts on Stewart and Cambage's performance this year?
Stewart is amazing. I mean, she's only in her 3rd year in the league, and she's already averaging 21 points per game. She can shoot from anywhere on the court. Obviously, 75-footers be darned. But you look at Cambage, and she came all the way from China this year. She came back to the WNBA after a couple years of hiatus, and she dominated the league. I mean, she scored 53 points in one game, and one of the most efficient shooting performances that basketball has ever seen, period. I think it's not asinine that Stewart came away with the MVP award, but Cambage meant a lot more to the Dallas Wings than Stewart meant to the Storm. I mean, Stewart also had Jewel Lloyd and Sue Bird that she played beside, and Cambage had Skylar Diggins-Smith, Notre Dame alum, one of my favorite players of all time, but Cambage really solidified herself as a star in this league in one season. That can't be overlooked.
Well, that's something that needs to be considered, but the Aces also received the first overall pick for the upcoming 2019 WNBA draft, which was announced on Tuesday. The New York Liberty, Indiana Fever, and Chicago Sky will round out the rest of the top picks. What do you think the Aces will do with that pick?
What coaches and players and veterans around the league have told me throughout this summer as I covered the WNBA is that the league is transitioning to more of a younger league. Players need to be more diverse, they need to be younger, but most of all, they need to be cheaper. It wouldn't surprise me if the Aces went with a big with the top pick of the draft to put her alongside Asia Wilson, who is already receiving MVP votes in her rookie season. But at the same time, I would also not be surprised if they shipped that pick to a team for a veteran player, maybe a veteran guard or a veteran post player to really bring a veteran presence into the locker room on a very young team that is the Aces.
All right, well, the WNBA will wrap up its 2018 season over the next few weeks with the remainder of the semifinals and the championship series. For now, we'll take a break before returning for college football with Juliana Sherry, Doug Greenberg, and Eric Frazier. Stay tuned.
Break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all to go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
Why spend your entire life looking for some on-ramp to the road to opportunity when there's already a well-traveled path? So you may be wondering, what does that path look like? Is it paved with gold? Well, here's a hint. It's actually paved with purple. Northwestern University, Your road starts here.
Why hang around waiting for opportunity to knock when instead you can track opportunity down and knock on its door? You might ask, what's the best way to identify where opportunity lives? Here's a hint. Its door is colored purple. Northwestern University. Opportunity awaits your knock.
At Northwestern, we're Wildcats in every way.
Northwestern break right through that. With our colors flying, we will cheer you all the go. Go you Northwestern, fight for victory, sweet victory, for the fame of our fair name, and go Northwestern, win that game. Go Cats!
At Northwestern University, we are pioneering innovation and achieving excellence across every imaginable discipline. At Northwestern University, the possibilities are endless.
Here is my handle and here is my spout.
When I get all steamed up, then I shout.
Tip me over and pour me out. Oh. The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Cheers. Take time to be a dad today.
Oh, look, a redhead. Staring contest. You still got it.
I know.
Come alive with the forest.
The dad was cute.
You were looking right at us.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
A boy born.
Welcome back to Medill Sports Talk. The long wait for college football is over. Finally, the 2018-19 season began last weekend with a monumental upset for Hawaii over Colorado State. The Rainbow Warriors overcame a 17.5-point spread en route to their first victory. Now the rest of the college football world will look to claim their first wins. I'm Juliana Sherry here with the closing segment of Medill Sports Talk's finale to our first season. I'm joined alongside our next group of great sports analysts, Eric Frazier and Doug Greenberg. Boys, let's begin with a huge matchup that's close to home. On Saturday, an hour and a half away from our beautiful city of Chicago, Notre Dame hosts Michigan in the second of 4 top 25 matchups in Week 1. Eric, the Fighting Irish are coming off a 10-3 season with promising returns, but they haven't had back-to-back 10-win seasons since 1992 and 93. Will they begin with a win this weekend, or are they going to put a loss in that column?
No, they're going to put a win this weekend. So Alice Campbell, shout out to Notre Dame, they're going to win this weekend. I'll tell you why. Basically, they ended the season off with a victory over LSU in the Citrus Bowl, while Michigan's on a 3-game losing streak. They're coming back with Brandon Wimbush for their starting quarterback, 1,800 yards, passing through the air with 16 touchdowns. Ian Book is right behind him if he does slip up, so I think they're going to pretty much do pretty well. And quoting the picture I saw online, that Notre Dame did shut out Michigan 31-0. I don't think it's going to be that bad, but I think the Irish, being at home, big-time game, being promoted first year, they're going to win.
Well, you know, one of the biggest things to look at with this is going to be the coaching matchup. Both Brian Kelly and Jim Harbaugh in similar situations, great successes and bowl game wins. But compared to the standards of their universities, the college football playoff has to be in the picture. Doug, the playoff committee is going to be looking for wins like this when it comes time to choose the 4 teams. Which coach has more to lose if they can't make that push in the playoff this season?
Well, when you look at it, to me, Brian Kelly has really become a staple in this program. He's going into his 10th season. You know, he almost won a national title with them. But I think that Jim Harbaugh is really, really on the bubble here. You know, he gets into the news with a lot of his off-the-field antics. You know, whether it's having sleepovers with recruits or climbing trees. And really, he hasn't brought it onto the field yet. He hasn't finished better than 3rd in the Big Ten East. And the Wolverines went 8-5 last year. It's not really good. I think that if Jim Harbaugh, especially with Ohio State being as weakened as they are right now, I think that if Michigan can't get it done this year, I think Jim Harbaugh's seat's going to start getting a little warm.
Yeah, you know, it's been interesting since his transition from the NFL. We really haven't seen kind of the Jim Harbaugh that we were used to when he was with the 49ers.
And to that extent, I think a lot of people still associate him with the 49ers more so than they associate him with Michigan. So.
All right, well, coaching matchup huge for this game, a really big matchup, but another one we're keeping a close eye on is the top 10 ACC-SEC showdown between Washington and Auburn. While the game will be played at the neutral site of Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, it's pretty much a road game for the Huskies. Doug, this essentially has the feeling of a big-time bowl game. You got the NFL atmosphere, what should be a sold-out crowd. Which team isn't going to be able to handle that pressure?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome that we get such an awesome environment, really early on. And I think that, Washington is really, really going to struggle in this game in my mind because just look at their history. They've struggled a lot in away games. Especially in big spots. They lost at Arizona State last year. They lost to Penn State in the Fiesta Bowl. They've been really bad when they've been away from Seattle. And to be honest, I don't know why they keep getting rated so highly. They play in a weak conference, the Pac-12. I'm putting them on blast. And besides that, they can't really play up to their competition. I think they're still a team that's very much on the rise, but they're not really there yet, and they're not going to be able to compete with a team like Auburn that has, literally twice played in Mercedes-Benz Stadium already, and they've played in much bigger games against much more intimidating competition than Washington.
Right, to your point, Auburn playing in the SEC. I mean, competition unlike any other.
Exactly, especially for the Pac-12.
Let's turn our focus back to our home team. The Northwestern football team is in West Lafayette tonight for a high-stakes Big Ten West matchup against an unexpected rival, Purdue. That's right, the Boilermakers are poised to have one of the best seasons they've had in a long time. Eric, the team that comes away victorious this evening stands a big shot at being able to knock Wisconsin off the top of the West Division. Given their individual schedules and talent, which team would be the best fit to challenge the Badgers?
I'm going to go with the Wildcats winning tonight, but I'm also going to go with the Wildcats basically being able to have the better chance of beating Wisconsin. I looked at the records last year. Northwestern 10-3, 7-5, right behind. Purdue's right behind Northwestern. I think that basically Clayton Thorsen's coming back. He had a knee injury last year in the Music City Bowl. I think that with him coming back, a lot of the stars coming back from that 10-3 squad, that they're gonna be poised to run the table in the West, but also give Wisconsin a run for their money. So pretty much Northwestern is gonna have a chance to.
Man, I got a lot riding on this game. Been a Northwestern fan since birth. I'm an IU alum. How can I root for Purdue in this? I mean, come on, Cats. But I mean, guys, we can't, judge what what Coach Braum is doing at Purdue. I mean, it's incredible what he's been able to build up there. Could be a big season for them.
Yeah.
Speaking of Wisconsin, however, Doug, you're a former Badger, and I'm sure familiar with the scrutiny surrounding last season's strength of schedule. But this year they have probably one of the toughest Big Ten road schedules. How do you think they're going to fare this season, particularly against the East Division's dominance?
Yeah, I mean, once a Badger, always a Badger, by the way, so I'm not former. You know, in my mind, the Badgers are the single most intriguing team in the country this year. Their number 4 ranking is the highest ranking they've ever had. They tied it with when they came off of a Heisman season from Ron Dane and when they won the Rose Bowl in 1999. They didn't really live up to expectations the next season, but this team I think is in a much better position to do that. It's going to be really tough. They have a road game at Michigan this year. That's going to be a hard one for them. But if they can get past that and they can get through the rigors of the regular season, I think they're in a really good position. They're bringing back a lot of starters from that elite defense, including TJ Edwards and Dakota Dixon. And, you know, my concerns mostly lie with receiver Quintez Cephas and his suspension, and if Alex Hornibrook can make that next step. But if they can get up past that and break through the hype, break through the ceiling, I love the Badgers this year.
Well, and they know how to win. They know how to win, and we know that.
Paul Chris is building a great program there. He's a great coach.
But can they win the big one? Can they win the whole Big Ten?
That's the question.
You know, if there's going to be a year to do it, this might be the year. Everything that's going on with Ohio State, you know, there's a lot of questions surrounding the West. While on the topic of strength of schedule, let's talk about Alabama. Yesterday, Fox Sports commentator Tim Brando spoke freely to WFAB in Louisiana on his frustration of the lack of commentary about the Crimson Tide and their weak non-conference opponents. Take a look.
Nobody talks about how easy Alabama's got it, but that is one pathetic schedule they're trotting out there, saying hello to the Citadel, Ooh La La, and Arkansas State non-conference. You got to be kidding me. And no one, I repeat, no one. I didn't see that in Roll Tide on ESPN the other night. I didn't see anything about that really tough schedule he's preparing those guys for, but it's out there.
Eric, Brando brings up a good point. This season, Bama will face Louisville, Arkansas State, Louisiana Lafayette, and the Citadel. Not exactly the cream of the crop of outside the SEC. The Tide has had a spot in every playoff thus far, and supposedly strength of schedule plays a part in that selection process. Is the strength of their conference slate good enough to offset these iffy non-cons?
I'm gonna have to relate to that because, like Doug said, he's a Badger. I went to Arkansas State for my master's, so I'm an Arkansas State alum. And they're also playing another Sun Belt team. They're also playing another Sun Belt team in Louisiana Lafayette, and they're playing the Citadel. I think that the SEC schedule won't be able to overcompensate that. If it does, and Alabama does get into the college football playoff, then a Sun Belt school needs to get into the New Year's 6 bowl games. I mean, Arkansas State had a 7-5 record in the Sun Belt. Lafayette had a 5-7 record in the Sun Belt, and the Citadel was 5-6 in FCS competition. I mean, if Alabama wants to prove like they're the big dogs, I mean, they got the controversy with Tua and Jalen. Schedule UCF. I want to see that matchup. The big talk was all year was who's the real national championship. You want to prove it, get it on the field. So yeah, the schedule's weak.
Yeah, it's a weak schedule. I don't disagree with that.
Arkansas State's not a cakewalk, but yeah.
But you know they had UCF trying to contend against them the whole time. So why not try and schedule that? Maybe down the line. Maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
Now before we close out the show, let's take a quick look at the Heisman hopefuls, fellas. Each of you, give me your contender and your dark horse hopeful.
Well, for my contender, my main contender for the Heisman, you already know who I'm going to say. It's Jonathan Taylor from Wisconsin. The dude is an absolute freak, has elite speed. He actually won a state title in high school he won a state title in high school for the 100-meter dash in New Jersey, and he has, you know, elite size at 5'11", 221 pounds. And guess what? Last year he tied the freshman record for the fewest games to 1,000 yards. You know who else did that? Adrian Peterson, Marshall Faulk, and Emmitt Smith. Not bad company, if you ask me. For my dark horse, I'm going to take Boston College running back A.J. Dillon. Again, he was a freshman. He only started half the season last year, but that didn't stop him from setting the freshman rushing record. And if you really need to be amazed, go on YouTube, search A.J. Dillon Sheds Defender. You will not be disappointed.
Yeah, I saw your guys, but I'm going to go with Bryce Love as my favorite. I mean, he was a contender basically going to everybody projected him going out of college football and going into the draft. He decided to bypass that and continue on with his education to get one more year in college. So pretty much I think that he's going to have a breakout year. He's going to get Stanford to the Pac-12 championship game, and hopefully with the good performance he can win the Pac-12 title over USC. And I'm going with my dark horse, I'm going Trace McSorley. He lost Saquon Barkley with Penn State, but I think he can get the ball rolling and keep it going. I refuse to say Tua as a Heisman contender. He still has to prove a full game, at least more than just basically a half a game in national championship to basically be in the Heisman talk.
And the other thing about Tua is he's not even the starter right now. He hasn't even beaten out Jalen Hurts for the starting job, so we don't even know if he's going to be playing.
And he's like 4th on like people's prediction list.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty crazy.
Play a whole season, play a whole game, then we'll talk.
Yeah, I agree. I like the Trace McSorley pick, though. Saquon's gone. Maybe it gives him a chance to shine. Well, that's going to do it for the first season of Medill Sports Talk. Thanks for joining us all year long and following our progression here at Northwestern. In just a few short weeks, Medill Sports Talk will be joined by a new cast of characters on air and behind the scenes. For everyone involved over the course of this season, and of course, my analysts, Doug and Eric, I'm Juliana Sherry. Have a great weekend.